What is good, everybody? It is your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. I think I know how you're feeling today, Chicago. Bears have been eliminated from playoff contention. A lot of sad feelings, a lot of angry feelings. And so, I leave you with this. In this video, we will talk about how the Bears improve in 2020. Right after this. Cue it, whatever.
On one, on two, on three.
Stop it! Did not do him like that! Mercy! Did you not get the memo?
So before we get into the video, if you are a Chicago sports fan, please like the video. Please subscribe to the page because we do talk Chicago sports weekly, even in these depressing times, and we don't want you to miss a thing. So make sure you hit that bell after you subscribe. So let's get into this. Chicago Bears lose today to the Green Bay Packers. For most of the game, the offense was unable to get the job done. We saw the same problems arise from games in the beginning of the season. Couldn't really get the running game going. Mitchell played somewhat decent, but again was inaccurate, made some bad decisions. And at the end of the day, the Bears season comes down to a resounding loss. So, as I watched the game, I looked at a few places where the Bears can improve in 2020. I would also love to know where you think the Chicago Bears could improve most in 2020. Leave a comment below and let me know your opinion on how the Bears improve. Number 5, Bears have to get this offensive line together. This offensive line all season, I think at the end we saw a little bit more cohesiveness with Cody Whitehair moving back to center. I think they tinkered with it in the beginning of the year and it threw everything off, but they have to get this offensive line together. Unfortunately, that means parting ways with Kyle Long, somebody who's been a staple of this offensive line for so long, somebody who's been a leader in this locker room for so long. But I believe that you have to basically go to Kyle and say, listen, we love you, Kyle. We really appreciate everything you've done for the Bears. We would love for you to stay on as kind of a player coach, but we're going to have to move you out of that starting position because with all the injuries Kyle Long has had in his career, you can't count on him to be there for most of the season. You can't count on them to be there for 14 games, 13 games. I understand the offensive line is where you're going to get your most beat up. And you hate to say it because Kyle has been a staple of this team for so long, but it's revamping this offensive line starts with moving Kyle Long out of there. You got to find somebody to replace Charles Leno Jr., either in free agency or somewhere, maybe in the draft if you can find somebody super late. I don't know. I don't know where you find his replacement, but Charles Leno Jr. has been a liability on offense all season. Not only blocking, I'm sure if you look at the numbers, his blocking numbers are probably not as bad as we all think, but the penalties have been a killer all year. I feel like I know the number 72 every time you should see the amount of times where I literally just look at the TV and go, holding, offense, number 72, 5-yard penalty. Repeat first down. I mean, it's astounding. So you've got to find the fix at the offensive line position. And I think, unfortunately, it starts with cutting some key pieces and moving into a new direction with that. And listen, like I said, Cody Whitehair has to be your center. If your problem is him snapping the ball, I'm sorry. He's got to get it together. Everybody's got to improve this season, so maybe that's something they work on all offseason. I think Cody not being at the center really inhibited his growth at that position this season, so I would like to see what he would be able to do going into a full season of him being center. Number 4, you got to get in the bunker. You got to go into the bunker and look at your running game. You got to figure out, is David Montgomery the guy? I think we've seen flashes of David Montgomery where we've seen absolutely he's the guy. I think a lot of what David Montgomery has had issues with is the offensive line up front and the amount of commitment to him. I'm sorry, I fully believe that when a player's number is not called for most of a game and then you call his number, of course, everybody should be ready. You should be ready to go when your number's called. You should be ready to roll. You should be ready to run through a wall when your number's called. But listen, it's tough to stand back there and block and protect Mitch, come out of the backfield every now and then, and just try to kind of find your place in an offense that's not using you at all. And then when your number is called, you got to just flip a switch and go. It's tough to do that. Do I think David Montgomery needs to find some self-improvement and needs to improve on himself next year? Absolutely. I think he's an amazing talent. I think we've seen flashes where he's been a great running back. But most of the season has been very lackluster, has been very much a letdown. Watching David Montgomery go through, trying to find holes, trying to find lanes, and a lot of times the fact that there's been a lack of commitment to the running game, that there's been a lack of commitment to David Montgomery, and even Tariq Cohen was lost in this offense this season, which is very sad. But somehow, some way, you got to figure it out. You have to commit to the run next season. You have to find a way to make your offense a rushing offense as well as a passing offense. You've got to find some balance. That's the only way that you're going to be successful in this league, especially if you plan on moving forward with Mitch. Number 3 for me is an interesting one because we've seen this defense be strong this year. So it's very hard for me at all to nitpick on the defense. But I do believe that if you can in the draft or if you can in free agency, we need to address our other cornerback position. I like Prince Amukamara, but clearly it seems that this season he lost a little bit of a step there opposite of Kyle Fuller. And there were moments where Kyle Fuller dropped the ball as well. There's going to be those moments in the season, even with the best of the best. But with Prince Amukamara losing, I would say a good amount of his battles, but later after the injury, a little bit before the injury, there was a lot of times where Prince was allowing guys to just get past them, and it went for big plays. So you hate to see that, but I really believe that the Bears need to look at the cornerback position and figure out a number 2 guy, whether you go find a young guy, whether you find somebody who's up and coming, or whether you go get a veteran. But the Prince Amukamara's, the Buster Screens clearly haven't worked out as well as we'd hoped. I think that they have played okay for the most part, but we expected more than okay from players on this defense, right? We expected excellence from this defense. So I would like to see the Bears try and find somebody a little bit higher up on the cornerback scale in the league, I guess you would say, higher in the rankings. I'm not saying by any means that Prince has been terrible. I'm not saying by any means that Buster Screen has been terrible. You can't say that anybody on this defense has been terrible. But you would like to see a little bit more out of that position, a little more help. You would like to see somebody elite, a little more even with Kyle Fuller, or maybe even, of course I'd like to see better, but at least even with Kyle Fuller, because I think that gives you a little bit more stability at that cornerback position. Now, number two is a spot you wouldn't expect me to go to. But I got to look at this defensive line. Khalil Mack, stud, obviously. Akeem Hicks, injured, but a stud, obviously. A lot of this line was injured. Roy Robertson Harris also had some injury problems. But I got to look at the Leonard Floyds on this line. I've got to look at some of those guys opposite Khalil Mack, because in the time that Akeem Hicks was out, 4 games, 5 games, 4 games, something like that. You watch Khalil Mack get double teamed. And then he gets off of the double team. And then as he gets through, there's either a running back or a tight end ready to chip him. You've watched that countless times. So he's basically getting triple teamed and there's no pressure from the other side. Are you serious? So I've got to, it's weird to say, because this defense you can't say this defense has been bad. Have they given up some drives? Have they given up some plays that we would like to have back? Absolutely. Have they been unbeatable? Absolutely not. But for the most part, this defense has been fairly stout and has been forced to keep the Bears in games that they probably should have been blown out of very early on due to the ineptitude of this offense. So I look at the other guys at the end of this defensive line, the other guys along this defensive line, besides Akeem Hicks, besides Khalil Mack. I'd even throw Roy Robertson Harris in there because he was pretty stout when he was healthy. But a lot of those guys, you got to go through the entire list and be like, okay, where can you guys improve? Because what we've seen from you, what we've been looking at from you, is not the team that we thought we had, and we thought we had dogs on the end of that defensive line, and we don't. Apparently, we got puppies. I would love to see this team getting to the quarterback more often when Khalil Mack's getting triple teamed. You know what I'm saying? It's not even so much the sacks I want to see. I want to see the pressures. I want to see you scaring the quarterback so much that you're about to get him that he throws an interception. That's what the Bears were so good at last season. And this season, I feel like we haven't seen nearly as much pressure that we saw last season, and I think that that's why the turnovers are also down. The number one spot that the Bears can improve in going into next season. You hate to say it because he's such a good guy. You see that he's working hard. You see that he's trying to improve. But you've got to look at it. You've got to look at the quarterback position. A lot of what caused failure this season, and I think the head coach, a good chunk of it is also on the head coach too, not utilizing his quarterback to the best of his ability, but your quarterback not being able to execute when you needed him to. Your quarterback not being able to hit the wide open man that Nagy has schemed open more times than not. Your quarterback not being able to find a way to get you those drives that we thought he all had in him, you know? The quarterback that we all thought, all right, maybe this guy is worthy of being the number 2 pick in the draft. Maybe Ryan Pace did find something because he went 24-12 last season. And of course, the numbers don't look terrible this year, but they don't look great either. And the eye test tells you all you need to know. The kid, he can play sometimes. That's a backup quarterback. I think Mitch's last 4 weeks before this game were phenomenal. He looked like a dominant quarterback. He looked like the guy that was supposed to be the number 2 pick in the draft. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He was comfortable. He had an understanding of the offense. And then today we saw a guy who was kind of the old quarterback, a little bit better than what we saw at the beginning of the season. You know, the yards were up. He was able to find the end zone a couple of times, but still pretty inaccurate on quite a few balls. And there were a couple times where you had to just question, like, where were you going with that? What did you see with that? Why didn't you take off with that? You know, so there's still something there that I don't know if it's going to click for him next season, going into another year of it. I think Mitch will be on the roster next year, but my thing is bring in competition. We had Corey Mays on the show a couple weeks ago, and he talked about how bringing in competition, everybody's there to compete. That's what these guys do. So you got to bring in something, whether it's Andy Dalton, whether it's Cam Newton. I don't think Cam Newton would be the best choice, but that's just my personal opinion. But you have to bring in something to get you going at this position. And even though I'm against Cam Newton, maybe Cam is the fix. Maybe Cam comes in and he shows the kid, listen, this is how you do it in this league. Mitch is the backup for a few seasons. You try to go back to him. I don't know. But you got to figure out, you got to get guys in this room. You're going to have to address it in the draft. You have to address it in the draft. But you've got to get guys in this room who are at least competing for the starting quarterback job. It can't just be handed to Mitch. And you hate to say it because Mitch is working hard. Mitch is trying to be the best starting quarterback that he can be, but it's not translating. And sometimes hard work just doesn't translate to the level of talent that you're playing against. Once again, I would love to know how you feel in the comments below. Those are my 5 keys for the Bears improving in 2020. I want to know how you feel. Let me know. I am going to get up out of here. It is your boy, Pat the Designer, back at it again. Make sure y'all like the video. Make sure y'all subscribe to the page. Y'all stay safe out here. Peace.